Good morning and welcome to Train Shed Tuesdays for Budget Model Railways. I've got quite a lot to talk about today. I'm going to talk about this layout, the Engage layout, some of the ideas behind how I let layouts evolve. I've got a bit to talk about freelance model railways, some cheap scenery, the kit stashes that we all have, and that sort of thing. This is actually my second attempt at doing this video. I did it earlier and I got 8 minutes in and realised I'd turned the camera upside down and I'd no way of knowing if the picture was upside down or the right way up, so I had to start again. So here we are, starting again. So I've been really taken with this layout. As a number of you know, I finally gave up, keep working on micro layouts, which are very enjoyable, but they were distracting me from this. And this has really got my mojo going again. I mean, the big helpful thing is it's Kato track. So it took me a whole of an hour to lay the bottom run, and then I'm running trains. Admittedly, I keep running trains when I should be building the layout, but that's one of the fun things. It would have been cheaper to do Pico track, and a lot of people have asked me why I didn't do ballasted track. And the answer is because in about 6 months' time, I might have had trains running. And anyone that will know me knows that I'm definitely on a spectrum somewhere, and I simply don't have the attention span and the motivation to do that. I would have just got sidetracked again with other projects. And then this week I've managed to get really involved with the higher level. I'm not getting as much railways done as I'd like. We've got the build happening and we're having to do a lot of decorating with it. Had a couple of health problems which have slowed me up. I'm going to have 2 teeth out in a couple of days' time. That's going to take me out of it for a couple of days. But I am getting on where I can. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how my layouts evolve rather than being planned. So the bottom layer here, I had a rough idea in my head, but I was laying it out, and this bit was going to be dead end here. And Doug was with me, which was nice, and he said, well, why don't you just connect it? And then you've got a passing loop. So that's what we did. And then I realised that as I've got a fiddle yard entry at the other end, I only needed 2 rows on my suburban station. And then the top was a smaller size, and I decided to see if my Glacier Express would run on it, which it would. And I thought, well, if I'm going to run the Glacier Express, I need a bigger station, and I happen to have that station in my box. It needs a bit of tender loving care, but that means more room. And then I discovered that although I wanted the passenger station here, I'm having some issues with this point. The loco runs okay that direction, but not that direction. Now I could put a straight in there to solve it, but it's the same curves either way. And either way, it means that I need more room on the layout. And so it was a simple question then of finding some more stuff of this left in the skip, and turning this into a tunnel rather than a cutting, and extending the top area. The whole top area came out of a skip from the builders, chipboard, battening, screws, the whole works came out of a skip. But that's how mine works. These things evolve rather than being planned. And I do like doing freelance. So freelancing for me really has come from a couple of different ways. And one of the things that got me going, it's going a little bit random here, but I like to spread it, is Practical Wargaming by Charles Grant. So before I did model railways, and everybody thinks I got Doug into model railways, but Doug got me into model railways 11 years ago when he was 9. Prior to that, I made tanks and aeroplanes, and I still do occasionally tinker. And I was into a bit of wargaming, and the wargamers have rivet counters just like model railway people, except actually they're slightly better in some ways. The model railway people are a bit better because although they're often boring, the rivet counters, they're usually right. Whereas a lot of the military wargaming guys are a bit out with their historical facts, particularly when it comes to the Germans. The biggest challenge facing the German army in World War II wasn't fuel and petrol for its armies, it was horse feed, because it had far more horse transport than it had motorised. But it had such a good propaganda machine that everybody then and ever since has believed it was all King Tigers and half tracks, and it wasn't. And so why you get wargamers now with more King Tigers on their layout than actually existed in the German army. Although some railway people are the same. My dad got me into military modelling. He had model railways when I was 4 or 5, and then gave it up and went military modelling. And he did tanks and things. And then he did painted figures. That's one of his, which used to live on my desk when I was an Army Cadet Colonel. And that was my dad's sign that he had on his desk. That's my dad's name, Derek. So I got into wargaming, but the book I've just shown you, he was a bit revolutionary, because what he said was, don't worry about doing an accurate army. You need 2 equal armies, one with a field gun. Both have got to have a field gun, a truck, a jeep, a half track, whatever. And he famously had, for instance, a HO gauge, 187th modern French tank in with wartime German equipment on the same army. And that's what that book's all about. I, in the end, even developed and designed my own freelance vehicles. And that's actually a freelance aeroplane. It's not a Harvard. It's a re-engined P-36 with a Harvard canopy. So I then did a lot of freelance. So when I got into model railways, freelancing for me was sort of second nature. That's why I've got a German station there with a freelance building that we made, with a modern Japanese building, with German buildings. Because let's face it, a modern town's a modern town. It's probably pretty similar, whether that's Japan, Germany, America or the UK. I've got my grain store there. Picked that up from mostly trains in Eastbourne in the week for 12 quid. Nice little station building. Yeah, okay, this is a bit medieval and there's not medieval villages in Japan, but I just like the idea of it. And I've got an English goods shed there. And when that's all done, that'll look great. And it won't really bother me. I'll be running largely Japanese locos on it, some freelance, bit of UK. We had Doug's Class 66 on here. And that's why freelance works for me. I'm not tied down. I can be creative. Of course, you can be creative if you stick to one place and one time, but not quite the same way as if you can use whatever you like. That's a little signal box I made myself, out of cardboard and scrap, and that will go on there. So that's really where my freelance comes from. And then that brings me to another topic, which is kit stashes. So I got this. Doesn't look much on the box, but actually painted up, it's going to come up quite nicely. But I reckon that's probably quite an old kit. And I got to thinking about how we've all got these great kit stashes. I recently, on my 00, used a kit that was still the original 1960s Airfix packaging. And that's a 60-year-old kit that hasn't been built for 60 years. And I wondered, I reckon 50% of what's been produced for model railways hasn't been built. I reckon it's sat in drawers and cupboards somewhere. It's not as bad as kit collectors. They've no intention of making them. I was as bad. I once went 30 years with a kit before I actually finally got round to building it. And they do tend to just collect them. With railway people, I think it's intent. I will build it when I have my layout. But because I'm planning too big a layout and I'm getting too obsessed with collecting, I'll never actually build a layout, which is what I think goes on. But I think it's a bit sad, really, when you think there's a company made a kit 60 years ago and it still hasn't been built. Not that buildings are sentient or anything like that, but it's nice to think they will eventually get used. So I've got an old Airfix Gladiator kit that again must be 60 years old, and when I get a minute, I'm going to make it. I don't care that the collectors will think what a shame. These things are made to be built. They were built to be built. They were manufactured to go on layouts. And so I quite like getting the old stuff and saying, come on then, you might be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, but your time has come. But I seriously reckon that half of what's been produced for model railways has never actually been used and is sat in boxes somewhere. There's my kit collection at the bottom. It's a lot smaller than it used to be. I sold my kit collection when Doug got into model railways to fund the model railways. Couldn't do it now. eBay's got really silly. They're trying to, not eBay's fault, but the government are trying to tax people selling on eBay. Never mind the large companies like Amazon avoiding all the tax altogether. You or I apparently can't sell a few items on eBay now without paying tax on it. And that's probably why eBay now is full of sellers, retailers. There's very little private on there anymore, which is a real shame. Mind you, when there were private sellers, they were getting a bit cheeky on the pricing. We will see what happens. I can still get my Japanese stuff nice and cheap, and the odd bargain slips through. Now, while we're talking about bargains, I'm not going to turn the phone off because the last time I did that I ended up with an upside down picture. So I've got scenery down here. Came in a big box from China. This came from AliExpress. Now I know all the goings on at the moment. They're not paying tax, we're not paying tax, yada yada yada. But until somebody shuts that loophole, all that scenery cost me 20 quid. This was about £3. That is about a third of what it will cost you if you go into a model shop in the UK. So that's Scatter. I like Scatter. These were a little bit cheaper, they're smaller, but I've got Scatter there. I've got loads of trees. I think there's 40 in there. Huge bag of course. Now this was really cheap. This cost me about 3 quid, and that is about £15 worth at UK prices. Same with these. These are the self-adhesive sort of tufts. These are between £3 and £4 in the UK. These were £2. So that came from a company on AliExpress. They arrived within 2 weeks. I wasn't ripped off. It arrived, and that's, I don't know, £40 or £60 worth of scenery there, which will make a big difference. So it's an interesting one. AliExpress is well worth looking at for model railway stuff. Be careful of some of it, but it's where Doug gets all the bogies for his wagons, for instance. So there we go, really. A lot to talk about this week. I've got cheap stuff from China. I've got the discussion on how many years worth of kits we've all got. One of the reasons I sold all my kits, I read a wonderful article by a guy who worked out, for argument's sake, that he could make 10 kits a year, but he'd got 200 kits and he was 70. He was never going to finish them, and so he sold them. And I will, once this big layout is finished, my intention then is to be quite ruthless with my 00 collection, and get rid of a lot more. I've got rid of a huge amount of track and buildings and kits and rolling stock and locos, but I've very little left. But what I have got left over there, I'm going to be quite ruthless about. I'll keep some of the Engage stuff because I suspect I'll make more micro. I do need to do something different with the exhibition layouts. I'm up in the air over that at the moment. So I've got this one that Matthew is kindly going to help me exhibit at Pevensey Bay. So July the 5th, if you are near Eastbourne on July the 5th, we will be there. Budget Model Railways, exhibiting that layout and that one. That's my Japanese one. So put it in your diaries, July the 5th. Nice little show. Haven't been there for a few years exhibiting. So I'm going to have 2 layouts there. But I can't decide what to do with these. The Japanese one's very impressive. Doesn't work as well exhibiting it. I'm not sure about exhibiting shunting layouts. I'm going to have another go in July and we'll see how it goes. The oval might work better. Can't decide whether to keep that one and exhibit that as a freelance layout, because I've very kindly been invited to the Bluebell next year, 2026, which is great. So I need another exhibition layout. I like the concept of helping people shunt. Eddie's a little fiddly. 00 possibly, but the tension lock couplings are awful. And I have got my O, but I also like the idea of an oval. So I've got a whole year to decide what to do with next year's, well, not quite a year, because I've got something for May for something. So I'm going to decide. I'm going to see how I get on with doing shunting, whether the concept of letting people shunting works, whether it might work better in O, or whether I go back to ovals where there's always something happening, and then perhaps do a freelance one, perhaps a bigger freelance Engage one. But probably you're going to find those 2 being sold to give me the room to put a layout in there to exhibit. I could, for instance, you see, put it on its side. I could make a huge Engage one in there if it was stored vertically, came in 2 bits. There's a thought, isn't it? It's just occurred to me doing that. Yeah, there's a thought. Tell you what, in the comments, let me know. What should I do for an exhibition layout for next year? Given that probably the next 6 months will be take building this, but I'll then have 3 or 4 months, I guess, that I could build something, and I could put this on hold to build the exhibition layout. So I hope you found enough to interest you. in my ramblings on tonight. I say tonight because I filmed this tonight because I won't have time in the morning, so it goes up in the morning. But that's what they used to do with TV, of course. They used to film it and then put it out, and we all used to sit and watch it. And you'd get 11 million people watching one programme because there was only 3 black and white channels. It'd be lovely if we get 11 million people watching this. Sadly, my viewing numbers are going down, although I've been told that's quite common at the moment with YouTube. So perhaps a little plea. If you like what we do, please do everything you can to spread the word. Publicise these videos, this video if you like. Let's set a little test. How many views can we get for this video? How much can people spread this on their own social media, their own YouTube channels, through their mates, through their clubs? How many views can we get for this video, I wonder? Let's see if we can get in double figures. We always used to be able to get in double figures, but recently not so much. So let's set ourselves a target. Let's see if we can get this video up into double figures. By which I mean 10,000, which sounds terrible when I know there's people out there very fortunate to get a few hundred. We were really excited when we had 300 subscribers. We're now on the way to 35,000. Thank you, everybody. That's wonderful. So I'm not being ungrateful in any way, shape or form, but let's see how many views we can get for this. But I'm always grateful. If there's 10 of you watching, I'll still make these videos. If there's one person that says, thank you, you've inspired me to make a layout, I'll still make the videos. So have a great time, and I'll hopefully talk to you all in a week.